I was halfway to the coat rack when I caught her voice, sharp, tipsy, and floating over the thump of bass from the rented speakers. I'd been standing in the back, trying to spot her in the crowd so I could make a quiet exit. I had work in the morning. These company parties were her thing, not mine. The lights were dim. The air smelled like cheap champagne and overpriced perfume, and people were swaying with that overconfident looseness that only comes after the third round. Then I heard it. Her voice, clear enough to cut through the music like glass against concrete. "I can dump him anytime," she slurred. A burst of laughter followed from the little knot of co-workers around her. "He's basically house furniture. Comfortable, but replaceable." Someone snorted. Another clinked glasses with her. Then, with a smirk I could hear in her tone, she added, "My real life starts Monday." That one hit different. Monday? What the hell was Monday? I didn't move. I didn't step into the circle and make a scene. I didn't throw my drink in her face like the kind of man they make in bad movies. I just stood there for a moment, feeling the words sink in like a slow toxin. My wife, in her sequin dress, laughing with people who didn't know me, reducing me to a piece of furniture. Hell, I wasn't even a good piece of furniture. Just something you leave behind when you move to a better apartment. I caught a glimpse of her through the shifting crowd, head tilted back, glass in hand, her team lead leaning in just a little too close. He whispered something in her ear that made her slap his chest playfully, like they'd been doing it for years. The sight landed harder than her words. This wasn't a drunken slip. This was comfort, familiarity, practice. Something in me clicked, not the kind of click where you break, but the kind where everything sharpens. My pulse slowed. My hand steadied. I turned, slipping between a pair of sales reps arguing about fantasy football, and made my way to the exit without so much as a glance back at her. Outside, the December air was sharp, cutting through the leftover heat from the crowded room. I pulled my coat tight, took out my phone, and scrolled to a number I hadn't dialed in years. "Martin," I said when he picked up. My voice was calm, almost casual. "You still working over at Hellman and Price?" A pause. "Yeah," he said slowly. "Why? You ever hear anything about Jenna and her team lead?" I kept my tone flat, like I was asking about the weather. Martin didn't answer right away. I could hear him exhale. "Yes," he said finally, "but nothing confirmed." "Good," I said. "Be at the office Monday morning. I'll send something tonight." I hung up before he could ask more. I stood there on the curb for a moment, watching the frost gather on the edges of parked cars, the sound of muffled laughter leaking from the party behind me. I didn't feel rage. I didn't feel heartbreak. I felt clarity, and that was far more dangerous for her than anything else. I walked to my car, unlocked it, and sat there in the quiet, hands on the steering wheel. Her voice still played in my head, over and over. "I can dump him anytime." She had no idea how fast any time could come, and she sure as hell didn't know that Monday. Monday would still be the start of a new life, just not hers. Martin's voice had aged since I'd last heard it, still steady, still carrying that mix of curiosity and caution, but with the weight of someone who now measured every word. We hadn't spoken in a few years, not since he'd left our old firm for a bigger title and a bigger paycheck. The irony wasn't lost on me that he now worked for the very company paying my wife's salary. "You ever hear anything about Jenna and her team lead?" I repeated, letting the question hang in the cold air between us. He didn't answer immediately. I could hear the faint clicking of his mouse, the scratch of a pen, stalling tactics for a man trying to decide how much truth to spill. "Yes," he said finally, slow and careful. "But nothing confirmed. Just talk. Talk. Office talk. The kind of talk that turns into HR nightmares if left unchecked." I didn't need to explain to him what I already suspected. He'd heard it all before in other companies, other scandals. "Good to know," I said. "You'll want to be at the office Monday morning." There was a beat of silence. "Why? What's—" "I'm sending something over tonight," I cut in. My voice wasn't raised, but it carried the weight of a closed door. "It'll explain itself. You'll know what to do." Martin didn't argue, and that told me all I needed to know about how much faith he still had in my judgment. "All right," he said, his voice a shade lower. "Send it direct to my work email. And be careful, all right?" "Always," I replied, and hung up. The truth was, I hadn't yet decided exactly what I'd send, but I knew what I had. Months ago, Jenna had left her phone on the counter while asking me to transfer some vacation photos to her laptop. I'd done the transfer, sure, but I'd also noticed she hadn't logged out of her backup account. At the time, I told myself it was just curiosity, flipping through pictures of company dinners, random snapshots of sunsets from her trips. But a few things had stood out even then. blurry hotel rooms that didn't match the conference schedules she'd told me about, photos taken by someone else's hand, a recurring silhouette of a man with the same build as the guy I'd just seen leaning into her at the party. I hadn't touched the files in months. But tonight, I was going to open them again. This time, I wouldn't be scrolling like a curious husband. I'd be sorting like a prosecutor. I started the car, the engine humming quietly as I pulled out of the lot. My hands were steady, my breathing calm. Exactly the opposite of what she'd expect if she saw me right now. She'd expect fury, shouting, maybe even the cliched, "We need to talk," text. But I wasn't giving her the script she wanted. I was writing my own. By the time I reached home, I already knew the structure: dates, times, receipts. Screenshots of messages where late client calls lined up perfectly with the boarding passes I'd found in her travel folder. Nothing salacious. No need for the cheap shock of half-dressed selfies. No, this would be cleaner. More clinical. The kind of file that makes HR departments sweat and legal teams clear their calendars. I stepped inside, the house dim and quiet. She was still at the party, still laughing somewhere, probably assuming I'd just slipped out early like I always did. My laptop sat waiting on the desk, black screen reflecting my face back at me. I opened it, plugged in the old external drive, and began pulling the pieces together. Clarity. Control. That's all I wanted tonight. And come Monday morning, Martin would have both. By Saturday morning, the house felt unnaturally still. No clinking mugs in the kitchen, no soft footsteps padding down the hallway. She'd slept at a friend's place after the party, or at least, that's what she would tell me. I didn't bother calling to check. I wanted the space, and more importantly, the time. The external drive clicked faintly as it read through her old backups. I'd labeled the folder months ago as Jenna Vacation 2023, which made it invisible to her eyes. Inside, it was a different story entirely. Photos she'd forgotten to delete. Screenshots she probably thought were gone forever. Tiny metadata details that told me exactly where she was and when. The first set of images looked innocent enough: hotel lobby shots, conference booths, group dinners. But in the margins, in the backgrounds, he kept appearing, her team lead. Sometimes his reflection in a window, sometimes just the edge of his jacket sleeve in the corner of a frame. Always close. Too close. Then came the messages. A string of late-night texts from a contact saved only as M. Timestamped well past midnight. Room service is slow. Might as well come over here. Tomorrow's presentation can wait. Bring wine. They weren't the kind of messages you send to a colleague, unless your HR department has a masochistic streak. The receipts were what nailed it down. I cross-referenced her travel calendar, meticulously kept for work reimbursements, with 2 flight confirmations I found buried in her email archive. Both trips weren't on her official schedule. One was a weekend in Denver, the other a midweek client visit to Miami. The passenger details matched hers and his. Same seat rows, same return flights. Piece by piece, I dropped everything into a clean PDF file. No commentary, no emotional outbursts, just a cold, chronological order. Dates, times, locations, accompanied by the kind of evidence that didn't leave much room for alternative explanations. It read like an investigative report, not a jealous husband's vendetta. That was the point. When it was done, I opened a new email window. In the subject line, I typed, "Confidential, urgent." In the body, I wrote just one line. Not just inappropriate, strategic manipulation. Let your legal team decide. Attached the file. Addressed it to Martin's work email. Hovered over the send button for 3 seconds, feeling the weight of it. Not guilt, not hesitation, but awareness of the ripple that was about to begin. Then I clicked. The whoosh of the sent email sounded final. I leaned back in my chair, the cursor blinking on the now empty screen. Somewhere in another part of the city, she was probably having brunch, laughing with people who thought she had it all under control. And in a few days, that control would vanish. Not with a fight, not with screaming, but with the slow, inevitable force of an avalanche you never saw coming. I closed the laptop, slid the drive back into its drawer, and poured myself a cup of coffee. Outside, the winter light was flat and pale, the kind that makes everything look sharper, colder. Perfect. Because by Monday morning, sharp and cold were exactly what she'd be walking into. She shuffled into the kitchen Sunday morning wearing one of my old sweatshirts, hair a tangled mess, sunglasses still on like she'd just come off a runway for hungover socialites. The smell of stale alcohol followed her like a shadow. I was already at the table with my coffee, laptop open, not for work, but for the quiet cleanup of everything with our names on it. God, I feel like a truck hit me, she groaned, grabbing the aspirin bottle. She poured herself coffee, dumped in sugar like she was trying to bury a body, and leaned against the counter. Then she smirked. So, about Friday. I heard you left early. Guess you missed my big comedy set. I looked up from my screen, feigning mild curiosity. Comedy set? You know, she waved her hand, dismissive. I was tipsy. Said some stuff about you. It's not like you care. She took a sip, eyes on me over the rim of her mug. Testing. I let the silence hang for a beat before I smiled. Slow, small, deliberately unreadable. You're right, I said. I don't. She laughed at that, probably thinking I was playing along. In reality, I just finished transferring the last of our joint savings into a trust she couldn't touch. The account closure confirmation sat neatly in my inbox, and my phone vibrated with one more notification. Our shared credit card, now frozen. She hadn't noticed yet. While she rambled about her killer moves on the dance floor, I slid my phone onto the table between us, camera quietly rolling. I kept my voice casual, steering her toward Friday's little performance. It didn't take much. She started bragging, tossing out little gems like, I've got options, you know, and if I wanted to, I could be gone by next week and be just fine. I nodded at the right moments, the way you do when someone's digging a hole and you want them to feel comfortable enough to keep going. The recording would be more than just a souvenir, it was insurance. I didn't need her to confess to cheating. I just needed her to establish the mindset. The rest was already documented in that PDF Martin now had. By noon, she was curled up on the couch, scrolling through Instagram and double-tapping photos of people she envied. I sat across from her, answering work emails that didn't exist, glancing at her over the top of the screen. She thought Sunday was a lazy day, a hangover recovery, the calm before another work week. She had no idea it was the last calm she'd get for a very long time. The quiet was almost soothing, her ignorance, my preparation. Every now and then she'd toss a comment my way, fishing for banter, and I'd give her just enough to keep her from noticing the ground shifting under her feet. It's a strange thing, watching someone carry on in a house that's no longer theirs, spending money they don't realize is already gone, making plans for a future that's already been dismantled. And the best part? She thought she was in control. Monday morning started with an unshakable calm on my end. For her, it began with the false confidence of someone who still thought the game was hers to win. She was up early, unusually chipper for a Monday, hair straightened, makeup sharp, navy blazer pressed within an inch of its life. She'd even spritzed the expensive perfume she reserved for client meetings and important days. Big presentation? I asked from the kitchen, not looking up from my coffee. She smirked. Something like that. She left without kissing me goodbye, which was fine. I didn't need the act anymore. From the parking garage security footage Martin later described to me, she walked into the building like she owned it, heels clicking, phone in hand, smiling at the receptionist. That smile didn't last long. The moment she stepped onto her floor, two people from HR intercepted her, one of them clutching a manila folder, the other with a laptop under his arm. We need you in conference room 3, they told her. No explanation. Just that tone you only hear when something's already gone very, very wrong. She stepped inside the glass-walled room to find Martin seated at the far end of the table, suit jacket buttoned, expression unreadable. Next to him, the head of HR, tablet in front of her. They didn't even give her time to take off her coat before the door shut behind her. That's when her boss stormed in, red in the face, jaw tight. Without a word, he dropped a stack of printed pages on the table so hard they slid across to her. She glanced down, expecting maybe a schedule or report. It was a message thread. Her message thread. What? He barked, voice loud enough to turn heads outside the glass. Did you do? She blinked rapidly, mouth opening and closing as she tried to form words. What is this? This is out of context. Martin didn't say a word. He just leaned back in his chair, watching her like someone waiting for the weather to change. The head of HR spoke next, voice cool and practiced. We're suspending your access to company systems effective immediately, pending a full investigation. Please surrender your keycard before leaving the building. Wait. Pending investigation for what? She demanded, the pitch of her voice rising. You can't just. Her boss cut her off, slapping a finger onto one of the pages. For this, and for what's connected to this. And before you say another word, understand that legal is already involved. She glanced between the three faces staring back at her, her pulse clearly visible in her throat. The glass walls that once made her feel important now felt like a spotlight. Everyone passing by could see her, could see the folder, could see the look on her face. And in that moment, she realized someone had set this in motion. Someone had lined up the pieces, chosen the timing, and made sure the walls were transparent enough for the audience to enjoy the show. She just didn't know it was me. She slammed the front door hard enough to rattle the picture frames in the hallway. Her heels clicked in sharp bursts against the hardwood, her voice already primed for war. "Where the hell are you?" she shouted, tossing her bag onto the couch so hard it slid to the floor. "We need to talk, now." But the house answered with silence. She stormed into the bedroom, yanking the door wide, and froze. Her side of the closet was intact, packed with blouses and blazers, shoes lined up in neat rows. My side, however, was stripped bare. Only empty hangers dangled from the rail, swaying slightly from the force of her entrance. The space where my duffel bags and jackets once sat was now just space. She spun around, scanning the room like maybe she'd missed something, like my absence was a trick of bad lighting. But when she went back into the hallway, her eyes landed on the kitchen counter. A single manila envelope sat in the center, her name scrawled across it in my handwriting. No note, no explanation. Just wait. She tore it open. Inside was a stack of documents. The first, divorce paperwork. Neat, formal, already signed on my end. The next, asset transfer confirmations. Pages showing our joint accounts emptied, property titles updated, my name remaining while hers quietly vanished. Account closure receipts followed, credit cards, lines of credit, even the rainy day savings account she thought only she knew about. And then she saw it. A small black USB stick taped to a single sheet of paper. Across the paper, in bold marker, were two words: "Play me." Her hands shook as she slid the USB into her laptop. The screen flickered, then a video player opened automatically. There I was, in the background of a dimly lit room, Friday night, the company party. The audio was crisp, every word sharp. Her voice came through, slurred but unmistakable. "He's disposable. I don't even like him anymore." The video froze on her face, mid-laugh, head tilted back, glass in hand. For a few seconds, she just stared at the still image, the sound of her own voice still ringing in the room. Then she snapped the laptop shut like it might erase what she'd just heard. She looked around the kitchen, as if expecting me to step out from behind the doorway, give her a chance to spin some desperate explanation. But the only thing meeting her was the quiet hum of the fridge. I wasn't there to yell. I wasn't there to listen. I wasn't there at all. And for the first time, she realized I wasn't coming back. The phone rang just as she was pacing the kitchen, still reeling from the empty closet and the USB. She snatched it up without looking, desperate for someone to talk to, someone who might help her regain control of the narrative. "Hello." Her mother's voice came through sharp and brittle. "Why did I just get an email about the condo title transfer?" Jenna blinked. "What? The condo?" Her mother repeated, slower this time, like she was explaining it to a child. "The one we co-signed for when you got married. I just got a notification from the title office. It's been transferred. My name is still there. Yours is gone." Jenna's mouth opened, but nothing came out. She lunged for her laptop, yanking the cord as she dragged it to the table. Her fingers fumbled on the trackpad as she opened her email. It was worse than she thought. One by one, the subject lines confirmed it. Title amendment, processed. Joint holding removal, complete. Account name change confirmation. 3 properties they had shared, gone from her name entirely. Not pending. Not requested. Done. Final. "Mom, I didn't do anything," she stammered, scrolling frantically. Her mother let out a dry laugh, the kind that wasn't amused at all. "No, I imagine you didn't. But he clearly did." "Why would he?" Jenna began, but her mother cut her off. "Don't insult me," she snapped. "You've always underestimated him. Quiet doesn't mean stupid. It means he's paying attention. And apparently, he's been paying attention for a while." Jenna's throat tightened. She wanted to push back, to defend herself, to at least buy time. But every new email she opened was a fresh blow. The joint investment account? Closed. The emergency vacation fund? Transferred into a trust under his name. Even the car title for the sedan she drove every day had been updated, her name stripped from the record. "You might want to ask yourself," her mother continued, her voice cooling, "how long he's been preparing for this. Because from where I'm standing, this wasn't an impulse. This was planned." Jenna's fingers hovered over the keyboard, but there was nothing to type. She couldn't undo these transfers with a phone call. She couldn't bluff her way past signed and stamped documents. And the most dangerous part? She didn't know how much more there was. Her mother exhaled, a long, tired sound. I told you once, Jenna. Marry a quiet man, and you'd better know which way his quiet leans. Turns out, his was the dangerous kind. The line went dead. Jenna stared at her reflection in the dark laptop screen, the empty closet still visible in the background. For the first time, she wondered if she was standing in a house that wasn't hers anymore, not just legally, but in every other way that mattered. It started with a ping from her phone late Tuesday afternoon, a notification from the company group chat. She opened it expecting a harmless meme or a reminder about some deadline. Instead, it was a video. Her video. She was leaning against the bar at Friday's party, drink in hand, head tilted back in a laugh. The audio was crystal clear. He's basically house furniture. I can dump him anytime. The background erupted in laughter, just like it had that night. The clip had been trimmed perfectly to end on her smirk. Underneath, someone had added a caption. Queen energy, or just cruel? She froze, stomach twisting, but it didn't stop there. By the time she made it home, 2 more videos were circulating, this time outside the company's official channels. One was a shaky phone recording of her dancing with her team lead, his hands at her waist, her mouth close to his ear. The other was a zoomed-in shot from across the room, catching her whispering something that made him grin like a man with nothing to hide. The caption on that one was worse. Office affair confirmed? Her group chats lit up, but not with sympathy. Friends who usually sent heart emojis, and you go, girl, responses were suddenly silent. 2 of her closest work friends read her messages without replying. Another removed her from a weekend brunch invite thread without explanation. On Wednesday, she got an email from HR. You will not be attending the upcoming company retreat. No reason given, but she didn't need one. Later that afternoon, her manager called her into his office and slid a printed memo across the desk. Effective immediately, she was being reassigned away from all client-facing projects. Given recent optics, he said stiffly. When she protested, his expression didn't change. It's not a punishment. It's containment. Containment. The word stung worse than suspension. It meant they didn't trust her not to cause more damage. She left the building that day without speaking to anyone, but she could feel the stairs following her. Whispers trailed in her wake. Someone in the elevator pretended to be deeply fascinated by their phone rather than make eye contact. By Thursday, the silence from her friends was complete. No lunch invites, no after-work drinks, no casual texts. She sat alone at her desk, scrolling through Instagram like a starving person looking at food they couldn't touch. Everyone else's lives looked untouched, smiling group selfies, cocktails, vacations. Hers felt like it had been reduced to 3 viral clips and a caption that wouldn't die. That night, she poured herself a glass of wine and sat in the dark living room, refreshing her messages. Nothing. Not from friends. Not from her mother. And definitely not from me. The party had ended days ago, but the echo of her own voice, laughing, careless, certain she was untouchable, was still following her. And now, everyone else could hear it too. A week later, the email popped into her inbox at 8:03 a.m. Subject line: follow-up meeting, attendance required. No details, no agenda, just a time and a room number. She read it twice, convincing herself this was finally her chance. A chance to set the record straight, to explain away the party clips, to charm her way back into the good graces of the people who mattered. She even dressed for it: sleek black dress, polished heels, a touch of red lipstick for confidence. By the time she walked into the building, she'd rehearsed her talking points. Blame the alcohol, imply harmless office banter, spin the weekend trips as networking opportunities. She believed if she could just get the right people in the room, she could manage this. But the moment she stepped into conference room 6, her stomach dropped. The blinds were drawn. The air was cold. At the head of the table sat 3 people: head of HR, a compliance officer she barely knew, and the company's legal counsel. A large monitor faced her chair. No Martin this time. No boss yelling. Just the quiet gravity of a firing squad that already knew where they were aiming. She sat down, trying to keep her expression neutral. So, she began, I'm glad we're doing this. There's a lot of... The monitor lit up before she could finish. On the left side of the screen, a spreadsheet of expense reports. Flight tickets to Denver. Hotel bills in Miami. Room service charges. 2 entrees, 2 drinks, 1 room. All marked as client development. On the right side, screenshots of internal messages. Can't wait for tonight. Glad we booked the same flight. Don't worry, I'll cover it under project expenses. Each message was time-stamped, each one tied neatly to the expense entries. Her voice faltered. This isn't. The compliance officer didn't look up from his notes. These are personal trips, billed to the company. That's a violation of both policy and federal law. And, the legal counsel added smoothly, clicking to the next slide, the documentation was provided to us by an external source. The next image froze her in place. An email header with my name in the from field. Her mouth opened, but no words came. She looked from one face to another, searching for even a flicker of sympathy. There was none. In that instant, something cold settled into her chest. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't an overreaction. This was deliberate. Precise. Someone had waited for the perfect moment to pull the thread and watch the whole thing unravel. And that someone had been sitting across from her at our kitchen table a week ago, smiling faintly when she'd bragged about having options. She swallowed hard, but the room felt tighter, smaller. Her pulse thundered in her ears. It hit her like a slow, crushing weight. He hadn't yelled. He hadn't fought. He'd simply outmaneuvered her. And now, every exit she thought she had was already bricked over. The office was unervingly quiet for a Thursday afternoon, the kind of quiet that follows bad news everyone already knows but pretends not to. Jenna sat at her desk, the blinds half drawn, a cardboard box already sitting open beside her. She'd been told to begin collecting personal items that morning, a polite way of saying the clock was ticking. Her hands moved mechanically, framed photo, coffee mug, the small plant she barely remembered to water, but her eyes kept drifting to the monitor. Her inbox sat open, refresh button and used. She told herself she wasn't waiting for anything, but the truth was, she was bracing. At 3:14 p.m., it arrived. From CEO. Subject, final review. She clicked it open. Your actions, compounded by ethics violations, have led to termination effective immediately. Legal reserves the right to pursue damages. No sympathy, no parting platitudes, just the sterile language of a door closing with a lock on it. She read it twice, then a third time, as if repetition might change the words. Around her, a few co-workers pretended to stay focused on their screens, but she could feel their eyes flicker toward her, catching the moment the final blow landed. Slowly, she began placing the last of her things into the box. Her hands weren't shaking, but her face had gone blank, drained of the expressions she used to sell confidence. It wasn't just the job ending. It was the scaffolding of her life being stripped away piece by piece. Downstairs, I sat in my car, parked across from the glass doors of her building. I didn't lean forward. I didn't roll down the window. I just watched. At 3:47 p.m., she appeared. The box was clutched tight to her chest, blazer hanging slightly off one shoulder. Her heels clicked against the pavement, each step small and deliberate, as if she were trying to delay the moment she reached the sidewalk. For a brief second, she looked around, maybe for a cab, maybe for a friendly face, maybe even for me. When our eyes met through the windshield, her expression faltered. I didn't give her a nod, or a smirk, or anything she could use to start a conversation. My hand stayed on the wheel, steady. She paused, shifting the box in her arms, like she wanted to say something. One last word, one last plea. But I shifted the car into gear, turned the wheel, and pulled away from the curb without breaking eye contact. It wasn't revenge. Revenge implies heat, anger, the need to strike back. What I felt was colder, simpler. It was closure. And closure doesn't look back.